Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku was recruited by the Teen Titans as their leader. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The air in Muzdalifa had a different taste since Kamino Ward. It was thinner, laced with a metallic tang of anxiety that clung to the back of the throat. The neon signs of the city still blazed with defiant optimism, painting the evening haze in strokes of electric pink and sapphire blue, but the shadows they cast seemed deeper, more menacing than before. For Izuku Midoriya, patrolling the rooftops alongside the veteran pro-hero crustacean, every shadow held a question: are you enough? All Might's retirement had been a seismic shock, a continental plate shifting beneath the very foundation of their hero-centric society. The symbol of peace was gone, and in his place was a void Izuku was supposed to fill. The weight of it was a physical presence, a leaden cloak he wore over his gamma costume. He could feel the stares of civilians on the streets below, a mixture of hope and desperate scrutiny. They weren't just looking at a hero in training, they were looking for a savior. Easy there, kid! Crustacean's gruff voice crackled through his earpiece. The pro-hero, a man whose quirk gave him a powerful crab-like carapace and formidable pincer claws, moved with the steady, unhurried gait of a man who had seen it all. You're wound tighter than a spring-loaded trap. You'll burn yourself out before we even see a purse snatcher. Izuku flinched, relaxing his stance slightly. He hadn't even realized he'd been crouched, green lightning from One for All, full cowling flickering around him at a low, humming 8%. Sorry, Crustacean-san. I'm just trying to be vigilant. Vigilance is one thing. Giving yourself an aneurysm is another. The hero grunted, his multifaceted eyes scanning the streets. The pressure's getting to you. I get it. We all feel it. But you can't carry the whole world, Midoriya. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Just carry your corner of it for tonight. Izuku nodded, though the words offered little comfort. His corner felt like it was expanding with every passing day. He was the secret, the last ember of All Might's power, and he was terrified of letting it be snuffed out by his own inadequacy. He flexed his fingers, the scars a familiar, tightening reminder of his reckless beginnings. He was stronger now, smarter. He had to be. An alert blared in their ears simultaneously. Central dispatch to all units in the Shizuoka sector. Report of a public disturbance and quirk usage at the Keisei commercial intersection. Suspect is armed and considered unstable. Proceed with caution. Crustacean clapped a heavy pincer on Izuku's shoulder. Showtime, kid! Stay behind me and provide support. No hotshot moves. They moved, leaping from rooftop to rooftop, the city blurring into a river of light below. As they neared the intersection, the scene devolved into chaos. It wasn't the explosive destruction Izuku was used to. It was something far stranger. The air itself seemed to ripple, like heat haze on a summer road. A streetlight was bent at an impossible 90-degree angle, yet its light still shone as if it were straight. The sounds were distorted, the blare of car horns stretching into long, mournful groans. In the center of it all stood a man in a tattered trench coat, his face a mask of panic. He was waving his hands frantically, and with every gesture, the world around him warped. A car swerved to avoid a patch of road that had suddenly buckled upwards, only to have its front end compressed as if by a giant, invisible hand. Hero Analysis Notebook, page 28. Izuku muttered under his breath, his mind kicking into its familiar, analytical gear. Quirk, spatial warping. Potential villain name, fractal. Seems to affect the geometry of his immediate surroundings. Appears to be involuntary, triggered by stress. The distortions are localized and inconsistent. He's not in control. Less mumbling, more action. Crustacean ordered, landing heavily on the street. He raised his massive claws. You! Cease your actions at once! You are under arrest! The man, Fractal, yelped, a fresh wave of panic washing over him. Stay back! I can't stop it! I just wanted to get some cash. The ATM ate my card, and then... His voice trailed off as the pavement beneath Crustacean's feet turned liquid, sucking the hero down to his knees. It's a defensive reaction, Izuku called out, leaping down to a safer distance. Sir, please! We can help you. Just try to calm down. His plea was lost in the cacophony. Fractal, seeing another hero, panicked further. He flung a hand out, not in attack, but in a gesture of pure fear. The space between him and Izuku folded in on itself. For a terrifying second, the 50 feet separating them became 5. Izuku barely managed to throw himself sideways as the spot where he'd been standing was pinched into a single, shimmering point before snapping back to normal with a deafening crack. He's not just bending space, he's compressing and stretching it, Izuku's mind raced. Direct attacks are impossible. The trajectory will be altered. He's too unpredictable. It was then he saw them. A mother, frozen in terror, clutching her young son to her chest. They were hiding behind a bus stop, but a stray warp from Fractal sent the metal and glass structure twisting into a corkscrew of scrap. They were exposed, and Fractal, in his escalating panic, was turning in their direction. A new distortion began to form around the terrified pair, the air shimmering violently. Izuku saw the boy's face, pale with fear, and in that instant, the weight of the world, the mantle of all might, the endless questions of his own worth, they all vanished. There was only one thought, one singular, burning imperative that defined him: save them. Crustacean was still struggling, his heavy carapace a disadvantage in the warped terrain. Backup was minutes away. It was up to him. All Might wouldn't hesitate. The decision was made. 8% wasn't fast enough. The distance was too great, the target too unpredictable. He needed more. He needed to be a thunderclap, a force of nature that could outpace a breakdown of physics itself. One for all. Full calling. 10%! He roared, the words torn from his lungs. It was agony. A clean, sharp pain that shot through every muscle fiber. It felt less like a power-up and more like being torn apart, and put back together in the same instant. The green lightning enveloping him flared from a steady hum to a raging storm. The ground beneath his feet cracked. He launched himself forward. The world became a smear of color. He was moving faster than he ever had in a controlled state, the wind a physical blow against his face. He could see Fractal's hand coming up, another wave of spatial energy coalescing around the mother and child. He wouldn't make it. Not like this. He pushed, gritting his teeth against the screaming protest of his own body. He pushed past the pain, past the limits, into the raw, untamed heart of the quirk. The power of 8 generations of heroes surged through him, a tidal wave of sheer will. He didn't just hit the distortion field. He collided with it. It was like punching a hole in reality. The raw, kinetic energy of a 10% St. Louis smash, meant to intercept the warp, instead fed it. Fractal's unstable, chaotic quirk and the immense, structured power of One for All met in a cataclysmic feedback loop. There was no sound at first, just an absolute, crushing pressure. The color bleached from the world, replaced by a blinding, sterile white light. Izuku felt a tearing sensation, not in his muscles, but in his very being, as if he were a drawing being ripped from a page. The last thing he saw was the horrified face of Fractal as his own quirk consumed him, and the wide, safe eyes of the child he had just saved. Then, the universe screamed. He was adrift in a sea of nothing and everything. Flashes of impossible realities burned across his vision. A dark, Gothic city where a man dressed as a bat waged a lonely war. A planet with a red sun, where a godlike being in blue and red stood as a champion. A vibrant island of warrior women. A green flash of light and a ring on a finger. The faces of his friends, Uraraka's smile, Ida's determined glare, Todoroki's quiet intensity, flickered and vanished like dying embers. He felt the vestiges of One for All roaring within him, a chorus of confusion and alarm, trying to anchor him as he was pulled apart by the transdimensional tide. Then, mercifully, there was only darkness. Pain was the first thing to register. A dull, throbbing ache in his head, and a sharp, familiar fire in his right arm. It was broken. Again. The thought was so routine it was almost comforting. The second was the smell. Rain-soaked asphalt, overflowing dumpsters, and the faint, briny scent of a nearby sea. It was different from the smells of Musutafu. Less dense somehow. Izuku's eyes fluttered open. He was slumped against a graffiti-covered brick wall in a narrow, grimy alley. A steady drizzle fell from a bruised purple sky, soaking his torn costume and matting his green hair to his forehead. His mask was gone. He pushed himself up with his good arm, a groan escaping his lips. His body felt like one giant bruise, and the 10% usage had left his muscles feeling like frayed ropes. He staggered out of the alley, leaning against the wall for support. The city that greeted him was both alien and vaguely familiar. The architecture was American, all sharp lines and towering glass, a stark contrast to the intricate urban sprawl he was used to. The cars were different, the signs were in a language he could barely decipher, English, and the voices of the few passers-by were a meaningless collection of sounds. Panic, cold and sharp, began to prickle at the edges of his exhaustion. Where am I? He whispered, his voice hoarse. He fumbled for the support tech communicator in his ear. Static. He pulled his phone from a utility pouch. The screen was cracked, but it turned on. No signal. No Wi-Fi. The time and date were glitching, flickering between known and unknown values. He was alone. Utterly and completely alone. The thought was a punch to the gut. He wasn't in Nizudafu. He wasn't even in Japan. The impossible flashes he'd seen, had he been thrown into another country? Another world? No, that was ridiculous. That was the stuff of comic books. But then, so were quirks. A loud explosion from a block away shattered his spiraling thoughts. It was followed by the high-pitched shriek of a bank alarm and gleeful, taunting laughter. Izuku's head snapped up. His pain, his fear, his disorientation, they were all shoved aside by a lifetime of instinct. Trouble. People were in trouble. He broke into a lurching run, his broken arm cradled against his chest. As he rounded the corner, he saw the source of the commotion. The front of a large, stately building labeled First National Bank of Jump City had been blown wide open. 5 figures stood amidst the rubble, stuffing bags with cash. They were theatrical, colorful, and radiated a bizarre confidence. A small, green-skinned boy in a high-tech battle suit with a massive head floated on a jetpack, barking orders. A hulking, brutish giant with gray skin and the IQ of a rock grinned stupidly as he ripped an entire ATM from the wall. A lanky man with a giant eyeball for a head fired beams from his iris, carving a path of destruction. A girl with chalk-white skin and pink hair cackled as pink bolts of energy shot from her hands, causing chunks of debris to crumble and police cars to swerve erratically. And finally, a young man in a black and white suit was creating glowing duplicates of himself, overwhelming the handful of police officers who had arrived on the scene. "Hurry it up, you numbskulls!" the floating boy Gizmo screeched. "The Titans will be here any minute, and I want to be soaking in a solid gold bathtub by then." "Chill out, Gizmo," the pink-haired girl, Jinx, said with a smirk. "Let him come. It's been a while since we got to break some of new toys." Izuku's mind, a sanctuary of order in the chaos, immediately went to work, overriding his panic with pure analysis. 5 villains. A coordinated team. The big one, let's call him Mammoth, is the muscle, simple and direct. The floating one, Gizmo, is the tech and likely the brains, arrogant but probably a glass cannon. The girl, Jinx, projects some kind of bad luck or decay energy, a probability-altering quirk? No, seems more direct, like a targeted disintegration beam. The one with duplicates, Billy Numerous, is crowd control, and the eyeball guy, Seymour, provides versatile, long-range support. Their teamwork seems practiced but is undercut by their arrogance. They're not taking this seriously. He saw a police officer get knocked to the ground by one of Billy Numerous' clones. Mammoth raised the ATM over his head, ready to bring it down on the helpless officer. There was no time. There was never any time. Izuku's body moved before his brain could protest. Green lightning, a faint 5%, crackled to life around him. It was all he could manage, but it was enough. He shot forward, a green blur of motion. He used the chaos as cover, weaving between panicked civilians and abandoned cars. He reached the officer an instant before the ATM would have crushed him. With his good arm, he hooked the man around the waist and pulled, tumbling them both out of the way. The ATM smashed into the pavement with a deafening crunch, cracking the concrete. Izuku was back on his feet in a second, standing between the villains and the police. His costume was torn, his arm was useless, and he was trembling from exhaustion, but his eyes burned with an unwavering fire. The HIV-5, as they were known, stopped their looting and stared. "Whoa, where'd this little green bean sprout from?" Jinx asked, tilting her head. "Some new hero?" "Lame costume," Gizmo scoffed. "Look at him. He's all busted up already. What a loser," Mammoth just grunted. "I'll squish him," the giant charged, a simple, straight-line attack. Izuku's mind raced. No leverage. Can't use my right arm. A direct block is suicide. Have to use his own momentum against him. Just as Mammoth was about to grab him, Izuku dropped low, planting his foot and pivoting. He wasn't trying to stop the behemoth. He was redirecting him. He channeled a tiny flicker of one for all into his leg for a shoot-style kick, not aimed at Mammoth, but at a loose manhole cover on the ground. The metal disc flew up, striking Mammoth behind the knee. It wasn't enough to injure him, but it was enough to make his leg buckle at the precise moment of his charge. Mammoth roared in surprise as his balance was thrown off. He stumbled past Izuku and crashed headfirst into a line of Billy Numerous clones, scattering them like bowling pins. "Hey! Watch it, you big oaf!" Billy Numerous shouted. Izuku didn't wait. He was already moving, his target, Jinx. He knew she was the most dangerous. Her power seemed the most unpredictable. He had to close the distance. He dodged a pink hex bolt that turned a fire hydrant into a shower of rust and dust. He feinted left, then darted right, using a police car for cover as Seymour shot an energy beam from his eye. He was a dancer in a hurricane, using his superior agility and analytical mind to survive. He couldn't win. He knew that. He was injured, out of his depth, and facing 5 opponents. But he could protect. He could be a shield. He could buy time. "Stand still, you little twerp!" Gizmo shrieked, firing a volley of miniature rockets from his backpack. Izuku kicked off the side of a building, twisting in midair. He couldn't dodge them all. One of the rockets clipped his leg, and he cried out as a jolt of electricity coursed through him. He landed hard, his vision swimming. "Heh! Got him!" Jinx purred, her hands glowing with pink energy. "Let's see what kind of bad luck I can whip up for you, hero." She sauntered towards him, confident. Mammoth was back on his feet, growling. Seymour, Gizmo, and Billy Numerous were closing in, forming a circle. Izuku pushed himself to his knees, his good arm raised defensively. His breath came in ragged gasps. He had done what he could. He had kept them focused on him. He had protected the civilians. But this was it. "I'm sorry, All Might," he thought, a single tear tracing a path through the grime on his cheek. "I wasn't enough." Suddenly, the sky darkened. A shadow fell over them, and a voice, cold and commanding, cut through the air. "That's enough." A red, yellow, and black shape dropped from the sky, landing in a perfect crouch between Izuku and Jinx. He stood, a bird-shaped throwing star already in his hand. "Robin. Party's over, guys." Jinx sighed, her confidence instantly evaporating. "It's the boy Blunder. Titans! Go!" Robin yelled. It was an avalanche of coordinated chaos. A sonic blast erupted from the side, sending Mammoth flying backwards into the bank. A massive figure, half man, half machine, stomped forward, his arm cannon smoking. Cyborg. From above, a streak of brilliant green light descended. A girl with orange skin and radiant green eyes flew down, unleashing a barrage of starbolts that forced Gizmo to dive for cover. Starfire. A green T-Rex, roaring with primal fury, suddenly materialized out of thin air, charging through the remaining Billy Numerous clones. It then morphed into a hummingbird, zipping around Seymour's head and confusing him before transforming into a gorilla and grabbing him in a massive fist. Beast Boy. Izuku could only watch in stunned awe. The teamwork was flawless, a symphony of power and precision. They weren't just 5 individuals. They were a single, unstoppable unit. They moved and fought with an unspoken understanding, each member covering the others, their powers complementing each other perfectly. In less than 30 seconds, the HIV-5 were routed, captured, and being summarily wrapped up by the local police. The battle over, the 5 heroes turned their attention to the last anomaly on the scene, the strange, green-haired boy in the battered costume, still kneeling on the cracked pavement. Robin approached cautiously, his stance wary. His eyes narrowed behind his domino mask. "Who are you?" Izuku tried to answer, but the words wouldn't come. The adrenaline that had sustained him was gone, leaving behind a tidal wave of pain and exhaustion. The world began to tilt, the edges of his vision going dark. He saw the concerned face of the orange-skinned girl, the curious, animal-like gaze of the green boy, the analytical scan of the cyborg's red eye. He collapsed, pitching forward onto the rough concrete. The last thing he registered before unconsciousness claimed him was a figure cloaked in dark blue moving towards him. She stopped a few feet away, a deep hood shadowing her face. He felt a strange, cold presence wash over him, a feeling not of malice, but of immense, ancient power. Raven knelt beside the unconscious boy. The others kept their distance, waiting for her assessment. She didn't need to touch him. The energy pouring off him in waves was overwhelming, even in his dormant state. It was unlike anything she had ever encountered. It wasn't magic, not demonic, not alien technology. It was vital, a raw life force magnified 1,000 times over, and it was crowded. She closed her eyes, extending her senses, trying to parse the torrent of psychic noise. She felt his pain, his exhaustion, his bone-deep loneliness and fear. But beneath that, she felt the power. It was a sun, a blazing star of hope and selfless determination. And orbiting that sun were other lights, fainter but just as distinct. Echoes, whispers of past lives, of struggles and triumphs, of voices long since silenced but never truly gone. She could feel their wills, their courage, their sacrifice, all coiled within this one boy's soul, a chain of legacy that stretched back through time. Starfire flew down, landing softly beside her. "Friend Raven, what is it that you are sensing? Is he a threat?" Raven opened her eyes, a sliver of violet showing beneath her hood. Her voice, usually a monotone whisper, was laced with a profound, unnerving awe. She looked from the boy's peaceful, dirt-streaked face to the concerned faces of her teammates. "This power," she began, her voice barely audible over the patter of the rain. "It's like nothing I've ever felt." She reached out a pale hand, hesitating just inches from his forehead, as if touching him might unleash the storm she could feel raging inside him. "It's full of ghosts." A rhythmic, metronomic beeping was the first sound to pierce the thick, woolly blanket of unconsciousness. It was a clean, digital sound, a world away from the chaotic symphony of a Musudafa hospital. Izuku Midoriya's consciousness returned to him in fragments. The searing pain in his arm, the phantom sensation of falling through worlds, the faces of the strange, costumed individuals who had appeared like gods from the machine. He blinked, his eyelids feeling as heavy as steel shutters. The sterile white of a ceiling resolved into view, illuminated by soft, recessed lighting. He wasn't in an alley anymore. He was lying on a soft, supportive bed in a room that looked less like a hospital and more like something from a futuristic science fiction film. Wires and sensors were attached to his chest and forehead, their readouts displayed on a floating holographic screen beside the bed. His right arm was encased not in plaster, but in a sleek, dark gray splint made of some lightweight composite material. It was humming faintly, and a soft blue light pulsed along its length. It felt cool and strangely comforting against his skin, the sharp, grinding pain of his broken bones reduced to a dull, manageable throb. "Vitals are stabilizing," a deep, resonant voice said, laced with the distinct whir of servos. "Cellular regeneration is, well, it's off the charts. Whatever his body is made of, it's working overtime to knit that humerus back together. Never seen anything like it." Izuku turned his head slowly, his muscles protesting the movement. Standing by a console was the hulking cyborg from the battle. Up close, he was an intimidating marvel of engineering. Gleaming chrome and cobalt blue plating covered half of his body, seamlessly integrated with muscle and sinew. A single red, glowing eye scanned the holographic display with intense focus. "Oh! You are awake!" Another voice chirped, this one warm and melodic. He looked to his other side. The orange-skinned girl with the vibrant green eyes was floating a few inches off the ground, her hands clasped behind her back. She wore a purple outfit that seemed to shimmer slightly in the light. Her expression was one of pure, unadulterated concern, and she drifted closer, her long red hair fanning out behind her like a silken cape. Please do not be alarmed, she said, her voice gentle. You are safe. You are in our home, Titan's Tower. Izuku tried to sit up, a reflexive instinct to be polite, but a wave of dizziness and pain forced him back down with a groan. Whoa there, easy, Sparky, the cyborg said, turning from his console. You took a major league beating. Plus whatever sent you here scrambled your biosignature something fierce. Just relax. Izuku stared at them, his mind struggling to catch up. They were speaking, and he could hear the words, but they were gibberish, a string of unfamiliar sounds. English. He was in an English-speaking country. He tried to respond in his native tongue. Doko disuka? Anatatachi wa der disuka? Where am I? Who are you? The cyborg and the flying girl exchanged a confused look. Can't say I caught that, the cyborg said, scratching the human side of his head. The girl, however, brightened, a brilliant smile lighting up her face. Oh, of course. The communication barrier. I am so sorry, I had forgotten. My name is Starfire. This is our friend, Cyborg. Cyborg gave a small, two-fingered wave. Yo, Starfire floated down to stand beside Izuku's bed. I am from the planet Tamarin. My species can assimilate other languages through physical contact. It is the quickest way for us to achieve the understanding. If you will permit me? She extended a hand, her expression open and earnest. Izuku, despite his confusion and fear, recognized the gesture for what it was, an offering of help. He was a stranger here, injured and alone. Any kindness was a lifeline. He slowly, carefully extended his good left hand. His scarred fingers met her smooth, warm ones in a formal handshake. The moment they touched, a brilliant green light flared from their point of contact, engulfing them both. For Izuku, it was like a dam breaking in his mind. An entire language, grammar, syntax, vocabulary, idioms, slang, poured into his brain in a dizzying, overwhelming flood. He felt a phantom echo of Starfire's own memories, the searing heat of a different sun, the taste of strange, sweet fruits, the sorrow of a lost home. It was intimate and breathtaking. In a single second, the world snapped into focus. The gibberish became words, the words became meaning. He gasped, pulling his hand back as the light faded. He stared at Starfire, his eyes wide with shock and wonder. I can understand you, he whispered, the English words feeling clumsy and alien on his tongue. Starfire beamed. It is wonderful to meet you properly. Now please, you must rest. The infirmary door slid open with a soft whoosh, and the other three members of their team entered. The first was the green boy, who was now in a human form, wearing a black and purple uniform. He had a wide, mischievous grin and was practically vibrating with energy. The second was the cloaked girl, who drifted into the room like a phantom, her face still obscured by the deep shadow of her hood. The last was their leader, Robin, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable behind his mask. He's awake, Robin stated, his tone flat and businesslike. He walked to the foot of the bed, his posture radiating authority and suspicion. Dude! Your power is so cool! The green boy exclaimed, bouncing on the balls of his feet. You were all like zip and pow, and then that big guy went bam. My name's Beast Boy. Can you turn into animals? Is your hair naturally that color? What's your hero name? Is it Green Lightning? Bushido Broccoli? Beast Boy, give him some space. Cyborg chided, though a hint of a smile touched his lips. Izuku felt his cheeks flush. My name is Izuku Midoriya. My hero name is... Deku. Robin's eyes narrowed slightly. Deku. We ran your face and costume through every hero database on the planet. Interpol, Argus, the Justice League archives. Nothing. You don't exist. He took a step closer, his voice dropping to an interrogator's pitch. So, I'm going to ask you again. Who are you? And where did you come from? The air in the room grew thick with tension. Starfire looked worriedly between Robin and Izuku. Beast Boy's cheerful demeanor faltered. Raven remained perfectly still in the corner, a silent, unnerving observer. Izuku swallowed hard, the weight of his impossible situation pressing down on him. Lying was pointless. The truth, however insane, was all he had. I don't think I'm from this planet, he began, his voice trembling slightly. Or, at least, not this version of it. He explained everything. He spoke of his world, of a society where superhuman abilities, called quirks, were commonplace, where 80% of the population was born with some extraordinary gift. He described the profession of pro-hero, the academies like UA High, and the towering figure of his mentor, All Might, the symbol of peace. He recounted the battle with the reality-warping villain, the feedback loop, and the feeling of being torn from his own reality. As he spoke, he watched their faces. Cyborg's single human eyebrow was raised in skepticism, but his red eye was glowing, likely recording and analyzing every word. Beast Boy's jaw was hanging open in cartoonish astonishment. Starfire listened with rapt, empathetic attention. Robin's expression didn't change, but Izuku could see the subtle tightening of his jaw. So you're saying, Cyborg said slowly, breaking the silence, that you're from an alternate dimension where almost everyone is a superhero? Basically, yes, Izuku admitted, feeling ridiculous. That is the most awesome thing I have ever heard. Beast Boy shouted, transforming into a green puppy and wagging his tail excitedly. It would explain the anomalous energy signature I picked up from your arrival point. Cyborg mused, tapping his chin. And the unique cellular structure. It's not alien, not metahuman as we know it. It's something else entirely. Or it's a convenient lie to cover his true origins. Robin countered, his gaze unwavering. How do we know you're not a weapon sent by an enemy we haven't met yet? Robin, please! Starfire interjected, her voice pleading. He is injured and alone. He fought to protect the officers of the police. His heart, it is clearly that of a hero, or he was putting on a show. Robin shot back. We don't know anything for sure. Before Izuku could defend himself, a piercing siren blared through the tower, and the soft white lights of the infirmary were replaced by flashing, urgent red. A holographic map of Jump City appeared in the center of the room. Trouble! Cyborg yelled, his professional demeanor snapping back into place. What is it? Robin demanded, turning to the map. Multiple energy spikes at Quantum Dynamics Industries. Cyborg reported, his fingers flying across a holographic keyboard. Heavy robotics, military-grade hardware. It's a full-on assault, and I'm getting a familiar energy signature from the command unit. He paused, his face grim. It's Slade. The name hung in the air, heavy and cold. The atmosphere in the room changed instantly. Beast Boy transformed back into his human form, his playful grin gone. Starfire's hands began to glow with green energy. Raven's posture stiffened, and the shadows in her corner of the room seemed to deepen. But the most dramatic change was in Robin. His entire body went rigid, his hands clenching into fists. The suspicion in his eyes was replaced by a burning, laser-focused hatred. It was a raw, personal fury that startled Izuku. What's he after? Robin's voice was like ice. Looks like the primary target is the stellarium isotope in the main research lab. It's a highly unstable, experimental power source, Cyborg said. Titans, suit up. We move out in 2 minutes. The team dispersed with practiced efficiency, a whirlwind of determined motion. Izuku, forgotten for the moment, tried to swing his legs out of bed. I can help, Cyborg turned, placing a heavy, placating hand on his shoulder. No way, kid. You're in no shape to fight. Besides, this is Slade. This isn't the HIV. 5. This is a whole different league. But my quirk, my power. I can still. You'll stay here, Robin ordered, his voice leaving no room for argument. He paused at the door, turning to look Izuku dead in the eye. Don't touch anything. The door slid shut, leaving Izuku alone in the silent, red-lit infirmary. He felt a surge of helpless frustration. A hero's instinct is to act, to run towards the danger, to help. Being benched, being told to stay behind while others fought a dangerous villain, it was a special kind of torture. He sank back into the bed, his good hand clenching the sheets. He was useless, a stranger in a strange land, and already a burden. After a few minutes, the red emergency lights faded back to white. A large screen on the wall flickered to life, showing a tactical display of quantum dynamics. Izuku could see 4 color-coded dots, the Titans, moving into the facility. A fifth, larger cluster of red dots represented the enemy forces. He slid off the bed and walked over to the main console Cyborg had been using. He couldn't fight with them, but he could watch. He could learn. The ops room was the nerve center of Titan's tower, a cavernous, circular chamber dominated by a massive central computer and a panoramic view screen that currently showed a dozen different angles of the battle. Camera feeds from city traffic cams, news helicopters, and the Titan's own internal sensors played out in a dizzying mosaic of action. Izuku had been moved here by Cyborg before they left, with a stern warning to stay put and stay out of the way. He stood mesmerized, his analytical mind, the mind that had filled 13 notebooks with detailed hero analysis, kicking into overdrive. He wasn't just watching a fight, he was dissecting it. The Titans moved with incredible synergy. Starfire was aerial superiority, her star bolts providing cover fire. Beast Boy was a versatile wildcard, shifting forms to exploit any opening. Cyborg was the unshakable frontline, a walking tank of ordnance and armor. Raven was ethereal support, her dark magic creating shields, binding enemies, and manipulating the environment. And then there was Robin. He was the tip of the spear, a blur of motion and acrobatic fury. He moved with a precision and grace that reminded Izuku of Eraserhead, but it was coupled with a rage that was entirely his own. He wasn't just fighting Slade's robots. He was punishing them, dismantling them with a brutal efficiency that bordered on vengeful. He's too aggressive, Izuku muttered to himself, his fingers unconsciously twitching as if holding a pen. He's pushing too deep, leaving his flanks exposed. On the main screen, Robin dodged a laser blast and slide-kicked a robot, embedding a Bertarang in its primary optic sensor. Slade! Show yourself, you coward! He yelled into his comm. Robin, fall back! You're overextended! Cyborg's voice crackled through the ops room speakers. I've got them on the run! Starfire on my 6! Robin commanded, ignoring the order. Izuku's eyes darted across the screens, absorbing data, predicting patterns. Slade's robots weren't fighting randomly. They were falling back in a structured retreat. It was strategic. They were leading Robin somewhere. It's a trap, Izuku whispered, his heart pounding. It's a feint. They're hurting him. He watched in horror as Robin, blinded by his personal vendetta, chased the retreating robots down a long, narrow maintenance corridor. Robin, wait! Raven's calm voice suddenly cut through, sharp with alarm. The energy in this corridor, her warning came too late. As Robin reached the center of the corridor, panels on the walls, floor, and ceiling slid open, revealing dozens of concealed plasma cannons. They all fired at once. There was no time to dodge. In a split second, a swirling vortex of black energy materialized around Robin, a shield from Raven. Starfire unleashed a massive star bolt that vaporized half the cannons. But the trap wasn't just the cannons. It was a distraction. While the team was focused on saving their leader, a single, shadowy figure dropped from the ceiling rafters in the main lab, right where the stellarium isotope was housed. He moved with a liquid grace, clad in black and orange armor, his face hidden by a terrifying, bifurcated mask. Slade. The isotope was the real target all along. Izuku breathed, his eyes wide. He saw it now, the whole elegant, brutal strategy. The robot army was a distraction. Robin's predictable rage was the key to springing the trap. The trap itself was a second distraction to pull the team's focus away from the objective. It was brilliant. It was ruthless. Cyborg, who had been providing heavy fire from the lab entrance, saw Slade at the last second. He's here! He's got the isotope, he charged, his sonic cannon glowing. But Slade was prepared. He tossed a small disc to the floor at Cyborg's feet. It wasn't an explosive. It was an EMP. A powerful one. The disc erupted in a silent pulse of blue energy. On the screen displaying Cyborg's vitals, every system turned red. His lights flickered and died. The half-man, half-machine hero froze mid-stride, his cannon powering down, before crashing to the floor with a deafening clang of inert metal. Cyborg is down! Beast Boy, in the form of a pterodactyl, shrieked from above. The stellarium is mine, Titans! Slade's voice, a calm, chilling baritone, echoed through the comms. As always, it's been a pleasure. With that, he fired a grappling hook into the ceiling and vanished into the shadows, the isotope in hand. The remaining robots self-destructed, creating enough chaos for his escape. The battle was over. The Titans had lost. Deku watched as Robin furiously slammed his fist into a wall, as Starfire and Beast Boy rushed to Cyborg's side, as Raven phased through the floor to check on her fallen friend. He felt a cold knot of dread in his stomach. They weren't just a team, they were a family. And he had just watched them get torn apart by a master strategist who knew exactly which strings to pull. He leaned against the console, his entire body trembling. The power he had felt from One for All, the strength of the vestiges within him, felt a million miles away. In this new world, faced with a villain this intelligent, this manipulative, maybe raw power wasn't the answer. His gaze fell upon the tactical readouts still displayed on the screen, the ghost images of Slade's perfect, deadly trap. And as the defeated Titans began their grim journey home, Izuku Midoriya did the only thing he knew how to do when faced with overwhelming power. He started analyzing. The journey back to the tower was a study in oppressive silence. It was a stark contrast to the usual post-mission chatter, the playful jabs from Beast Boy or the booming, good-natured laughter of Cyborg. Now, the only sounds in the T-car's cabin were the whisper of the electric engine and the rhythmic thump-thump-thump of the windshield wipers pushing away the relentless Jump City rain. Izuku sat wedged in a back seat, trying to make himself as small as possible. He was an alien element, an intruder in a sacred space of grief and frustration. In front of him, Starfire hovered slightly, her usual radiant glow dimmed to a soft, worried luminescence. Beast Boy, in his human form, was slumped in his seat, staring blankly at his own reflection in the rain-streaked window. Robin piloted the vehicle with a white-knuckle grip, his jaw set so tight Izuku worried his teeth might crack. The heaviest silence emanated from the gurney in the back, where Cyborg's inert form lay. The EMP had been surgical, disabling his cybernetics without killing his organic components, but he was, for all intents and purposes, a statue of metal and flesh. Raven floated beside him, a motionless sentinel cloaked in shadow, her hands resting just above his chest as if she were trying to coax his mechanical soul back to life. When they arrived back in the tower's subterranean garage, the grim procession continued. They moved Cyborg to the infirmary, the same one Izuku had just vacated, and laid him on the medical slab. It took nearly an hour of painstaking work, with Starfire providing targeted energy surges and Raven using her powers to phase microscopic components back into alignment, before Cyborg's systems began to flicker back to life. His red eye lit up first, followed by a series of diagnostic lights across his chassis. He sat up with a massive groan, a sound of grinding metal and aching muscle. "Report," he rasped, his voice staticky. "Slade has the stellarium," Robin stated, his voice devoid of emotion. He was leaning against the far wall, his arms crossed, a coiled spring of fury. "He got away clean, wiped the security footage, fried the local servers. It's like he was never there. He played us," Cyborg said, clenching a metallic fist. The events were replaying in his memory banks. "He knew I'd charge. He knew exactly what kind of EMP would take me down without causing a chain reaction in my power core. He did his homework. He did more than that," Beast Boy muttered, his voice unusually small. He was looking at the floor, unable to meet anyone's eyes. "He used you, Robin. He knew you'd go after him like that." The accusation, however gentle, hung in the air like poison gas. Robin's head snapped up, his mask doing little to hide the venom in his glare. "I had the situation under control," he snarled. His bots were falling back. "I was pushing the advantage. No, you were running into a cage and you didn't even see the bars." Cyborg shot back, his voice finally clearing. He swung his legs off the slab, standing to his full, intimidating height. "I gave a tactical order to fall back and regroup. You ignored it. You ignored me. You're leader of tactics. I'm the team leader. My call is final." Robin's voice rose, cracking with a fury that was born of humiliation. "If you had all kept up, we could have cornered him." "Cornered him? He was cornering us." Beast Boy finally looked up, his face etched with a rare seriousness. "Dude, You almost got yourself vaporized. If it weren't for Raven, you'd be a pile of ash right now. And Sai, you got Sai hurt because you weren't thinking. Friends, please! Starfire cried, floating between them, her hands outstretched as if to ward off their bitter words. This is what he desires! For us to turn our anger upon each other. We must remain unified. We must remain the Titans. Don't you get it? Robin's voice was ragged, desperate. This isn't just some villain of the week. This is Slade. You can't fight him with playbooks and teamwork drills. You have to be relentless. You have to be willing to do what he won't expect. He expected exactly what you did. A quiet, monotone voice cut through the argument like a shard of obsidian. All eyes turned to Raven, who had not moved from her spot by the console. Her face was hidden, but her words carried an absolute, chilling finality. He used your history. He used your anger. Your emotions compromised the mission from the start. He didn't outfight us. He outthought you. The brutal, unvarnished truth silenced them all. There was no counter-argument. Robin simply stared at her, his shoulders slumping slightly, the rage in his posture deflating into a visible, profound hurt. He had failed. His team knew it, the villain knew it, and worst of all, he knew it. He had been so focused on the ghost of his past apprenticeship, on proving he was no longer Slade's pawn, that he had danced to his tune perfectly. Into this chasm of broken trust and recrimination, a new voice entered, hesitant and trembling. You excuse me? Every head in the room swiveled towards Izuku. He stood in the doorway, clutching a notebook to his chest like a shield. He had been watching from the ops room, and when the team had returned, he had retreated, knowing this was a private, painful moment. But listening to them tear each other apart, listening to the echoes of his own fears of failure and inadequacy in their voices, he knew he couldn't stay silent. His feet had carried him here against his better judgment. He flinched under their combined gaze. Sorry, he stammered, bowing his head slightly. I don't mean to interrupt. I was watching the fight. And I took some notes. He held out the notebook. It was one of his, brought with him through the dimensional tear. The cover, once a pristine white, was now scuffed and water-stained, with Hero Analysis for the Future, No. 14. Inch written in neat, hopeful characters on the front. Cyborg raised a skeptical eyebrow. Robin just scoffed, turning away in dismissal. But Starfire, ever kind, floated over and gently took the book from his trembling hands. What is this, friend Midoriya? She asked softly. It's what I do, Izuku explained, finding a sliver of confidence as he spoke about the one thing he was truly good at. I analyze heroes and villains, their powers, their strategies, their equipment, their psychological tells. I try to understand how they work, to find weaknesses, but also to find new ways their strengths could work together. He took a hesitant step into the room as Starfire opened the book. The others, their curiosity piqued despite themselves, drifted closer. Beast Boy peeked over her shoulder, his eyes widening. The pages were a chaotic explosion of organized thought. Every inch was covered in his neat, compact handwriting, interspersed with incredibly detailed sketches and diagrams. There was a full schematic of Cyborg's sonic cannon, with notes scribbled in the margins theorizing how its frequency could be modulated to create non-destructive vibrational pulses, capable of disassembling machinery without an explosion. There was a drawing of Beast Boy mid-transformation from a rhino to a flea, with calculations on mass conservation and potential energy. But the most recent pages were dedicated to them, to the Teen Titans. And to Slade. Whoa! Beast Boy breathed, pointing at a diagram. Is that me and Starfire? The drawing depicted Starfire creating a contained vortex of Starbolt energy, and Beast Boy, as a falcon, flying through it. Izuku had labeled it Synergistic Maneuver, Star Strike Falcon. Beast Boy's avian form could be temporarily supercharged by Starfire's energy, allowing for a faster-than-sound aerial assault that would carry a concussive, non-lethal impact. Requires precise timing. There were dozens more. A move called Obsidian Shield, where Raven would create a disk of solid shadow for Robin to use as a throwable, ricocheting projectile. A Gatling Shot, where Cyborg would launch Beast Boy in the form of a hardened beetle at high velocity. Cyborg took the notebook from Starfire, his optical sensor scanning a page at an impossible speed. He stopped on the section dedicated to him. "Kid, these equations for recalibrating my targeting systems, they'd increase my accuracy by at least 12%. How did you? I just watched how you compensate for recoil and calculated a more efficient gyroscopic stabilization algorithm." Izuku mumbled, his face turning beet red. Then Cyborg flipped to the last few pages, the ones written in a frantic, hurried scrawl. They were all about Slade. "He wasn't testing you," Izuku said, finding his voice. "He was gathering data. The robot army wasn't the main attack, it was a sensory net, recording your response times, energy outputs, and combat patterns. The corridor trap wasn't just to isolate Robin-san. It was a controlled experiment to gauge the maximum defensive output of Raven-san's shields and Starfire-san's starbolts." He pointed a shaking finger at a flowchart he had drawn. "It was a 3-layer feint. Layer 1, the obvious threat of the robots. Layer 2, the personal bait for Robin-san, which was the core of the plan. Layer 3, the manufactured crisis of the trap, which drew everyone's attention away from the true objective. He didn't just beat you physically. He wrote a script, and you all played your parts perfectly because he knew your characters." The room was deathly quiet. Izuku had not only articulated their failure but had broken it down into its cold, logical components. He had dissected their defeat with the precision of a surgeon. To Cyborg, Beast Boy, and Starfire, it was a revelation. A stunning display of tactical genius from this strange, quiet boy. To Robin, it was the most profound humiliation he had ever experienced. This outsider, this kid, had spent less than a day with them and had produced a report that laid his every failure bare for his team to see. The notebook wasn't a gift, it was an accusation. It was a scoreboard, and he had a 0. "So what's your point?" Robin's voice was dangerously low. "You've got a fancy playbook. This isn't a game. People get hurt. People die. That's why this is so important." Izuku's voice rose with passion, his fear momentarily forgotten. "Because it's not a game. You can't just fight him with anger. He's stronger there. He feeds on it. You have to fight him with intelligence, with strategy, with a unity he can't predict. You have to be better, not just stronger." A tense silence descended, broken only by the hum of the infirmary equipment. Starfire looked from the notebook to Izuku, her green eyes filled with a dawning understanding. Beast Boy stared at Izuku as if seeing him for the first time. Cyborg was still scanning the pages, a look of grudging then growing respect on his face. It was Raven who finally spoke, her voice cutting through the tension and solidifying the moment into something pivotal. She had drifted silently from the corner to stand behind the others, her shadowed face fixed on Izuku. "He is right." Everyone looked at her. "Slade feels different this time," she continued, her monotone voice imbued with a strange gravity. "The last time we fought him, there was a chaotic element. An obsession. Now, he is colder. More focused, like a surgeon with a scalpel. The danger is greater than it has ever been." She turned her unseen gaze toward Robin. "And he knows you, Robin. Every button to push, every nerve to touch. He plays you like an instrument. Your anger, your history with him, they are no longer your weapons. They are his greatest weapons against us." Robin flinched as if struck. Raven then gestured a pale, slender hand toward Izuku. "He is an anomaly. A variable Slade cannot account for. His mind does not operate on the frequency of vengeance or ego. It operates on analysis and protection. It is a strategy of selflessness. Slade can't comprehend that. He can't predict it." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "And his power, it is more than just strength. When he was unconscious, I felt it. It is a wellspring of experience, of courage from others who came before him. It is a living legacy. It is the one thing in this world Slade knows nothing about." She took a slow, deliberate step forward, the entire team holding its breath. Her next words would change everything. "For the duration of this threat," she said, her voice clear and absolute. "Until Slade is defeated, I believe Izuku Midoriya should lead us." The shock in the room was a physical force. Beast Boy's jaw dropped. Starfire gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Cyborg's red eye widened, worrying as it processed the sheer audacity of the suggestion. Izuku himself felt the blood drain from his face. Led? Him? Led them? The idea was so preposterous, so terrifying, that he felt his knees weaken. He was Deku, the useless, quirkless boy, the kid who broke his bones every time he used his power. He wasn't a leader. He was a liability. You can't be serious. Robin finally choked out, a bitter, disbelieving laugh escaping his lips. You want to put him in charge? He just got here. We don't know anything about him. He's just a kid with a notebook. His notebook showed more insight in 10 minutes than you showed in the entire battle. Raven retorted, her voice unflinching. It was a brutal, merciless blow, and it landed perfectly. Robin recoiled, speechless. Starfire looked at Izuku, at his terrified, earnest face. She remembered the feeling of his mind when she'd shared her language, the overwhelming sense of duty, of kindness, of a desperate need to save everyone. She looked at the notebook, at its intricate plans designed not for glory, but for keeping her friends safe. She made her decision. I agree with Raven, she said softly, but with conviction. His heart is pure. I trust him. The playbook idea is awesome. Beast Boy chimed in, his enthusiasm returning. Star Strike Falcon! Come on, that sounds so cool. I vote for the new guy. 3 votes. All eyes turned to Cyborg. He looked from Robin's betrayed face to Izuku's panicked one. He was the logician. The tactician? His decision held the most weight. He closed his human eye, processing. Robin was their leader, their brother. But Raven was right. His history with Slade was a crippling weakness. They had tried fighting Slade Robin's way for years, a cycle of wins and devastating losses. This new variable, this kid's impossible brain. He let out a heavy sigh, a sound of hydraulics and regret. Logically, he began, his voice grim. Our current approach is not working. Midoriya represents a paradigm shift. A new strategy. As a temporary measure, against this specific threat, it's the sound tactical choice. He opened his eye and looked at Robin. I'm sorry, man. But I'm with them. The betrayal was complete. Robin stared at his team, at the faces of his family, who had just sided with a complete stranger over him. He looked at Izuku, this stammering, unassuming boy who had, in the span of a single day, dismantled his life's work. His leadership, his authority, his place at the head of this family, it had all been stripped away. He didn't shout. He didn't rage. A cold, frightening calm settled over him. Fine, he said, his voice flat and dead. If you all think he can do a better job leading you against Slade, then you're on your own. He turned on his heel and walked towards the door, his every step a hammer blow in the silent room. Robin, wait! Starfire cried, reaching out for him. He didn't look back. He shoved the infirmary door open and stormed out into the hallway. A moment later, the heavy thud of a steel door slamming shut echoed through the tower, a sound of finality, of a bridge being burned. The remaining Titans stood in stunned silence. They had made their choice, and it had fractured their family, but no one felt the weight of that slammed door more than Izuku Midoriya. He looked at the faces of the heroes now looking to him for guidance, at the empty doorway where their leader had just been. He had wanted to help. He had wanted to offer a solution, to prevent them from hurting. Instead, he had become the wedge that drove them apart. He had broken the Teen Titans. A wave of nausea and vertigo washed over him. The mantle of All Might had been a crushing weight, but this was an impossible burden. What have I done? He thought, the notebook feeling impossibly heavy in his hands. He wasn't a hero. He was a catastrophe. The silence Robin left in his wake was a physical entity, a thick, suffocating pressure that filled the infirmary. It pressed down on Izuku's shoulders, stealing the air from his lungs. The faces of his new, self-appointed team were turned towards him, a mixture of hope, uncertainty, and a desperate plea for reassurance he felt utterly incapable of providing. They had chosen him. They had broken their own family for a theory he'd scribbled in a notebook. Imposter syndrome was not a new sensation for Izuku Midoriya. It had been his constant companion since the day All Might had chosen him, a persistent whisper in the back of his mind that he was a fraud, a pretender playing with a borrowed power too grand for his soul. But this was different. This wasn't a whisper, it was a deafening, soul-crushing roar. He wasn't filling the shoes of a revered mentor. He was standing in the gaping wound of a friendship he had just torn open. "So, what's the plan, boss?" Beast Boy asked, his attempt at levity falling flat in the cavernous silence. He kicked at an invisible piece of dust on the floor, unable to meet Izuku's eyes for more than a second. Izuku's throat felt like it was full of sand. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. "Leader? Me?" The thought was absurd. He looked at them. Cyborg, a technological powerhouse with a strategic mind of his own. Starfire, an alien princess who could level buildings with a single blast. Raven, a mystical empath who held the forces of a dark dimension at bay. And he was just Deku. A boy with broken bones and a notebook. I can't. He finally managed to stammer, his voice barely a whisper. He took a step back, holding his hands up defensively. "You've made a mistake. Robin-san is your leader. I'm nobody. I shouldn't have said anything. I'm so sorry. It's too late for apologies." Raven's voice cut through his panic, calm and unyielding. She drifted forward, her presence a pool of tranquility in his storm of anxiety. "The decision has been made. Regret will not help us defeat Slade. A plan will." "But I don't have a plan!" Izuku cried, his voice cracking. "My notes are just theories. Observations. I've never led anyone in a real fight. I'm still a student. I follow orders, I don't give them." Cyborg, who had been quietly observing, let out a heavy sigh. He walked over and placed a reassuringly solid, metallic hand on Izuku's shoulder. The weight of it was grounding. "Look, kid, nobody's asking you to be Robin. We just need a new angle. Slade knows how Robin thinks. He doesn't know how you think. That's our advantage. We just need you to do what you do best, think, and we will be helping you." Starfire added, her voice a warm, comforting balm. She floated over, her smile genuine despite the sadness in her eyes. "A leader is not required to have all of the answers. They must simply know how to ask the right questions of their team. We are your team now." Her unwavering faith was both terrifying and strangely strengthening. He looked at their expectant faces. He was their last, best hope. Running away wasn't an option. That wasn't what a hero did. All Might had trusted him. And now, for some insane reason, they did too. He had to try. For them. To fix the mess he had made. He took a deep breath, the air still tasting of ozone and failure. "Okay," he said, his voice small but firm. "Okay. We need to start with training. We need to see if any of my ideas are even possible." The next morning, Izuku stood in the center of the tower's enormous training room. It was a vast, circular chamber with a domed ceiling, and the walls were a gleaming white canvas that could project any environment or holographic opponent. It was the most advanced gymnasium he had ever seen, making UA's Gamma Gym look like a community center. And he felt about as small and out of place as an ant on a dinner plate. Cyborg, Starfire, and Beast Boy stood before him in their training gear, waiting for instructions. Raven hovered near the wall, observing. The air was thick with a nervous, awkward energy. This was his first day as their acting leader, and he had no idea what he was doing. "All right, let's begin," he said, his voice squeaking. He cleared his throat. "First, I'd like to try the Star Strike Falcon maneuver. Starfire-san, if you could please generate a controlled energy vortex. Not too powerful. Beast Boy-san, if you could assume your falcon form and attempt to fly through it." The two titans exchanged a look. You got it, Midori dude," Beast Boy said, giving a weak thumbs up before morphing into a sleek, green peregrine falcon. Starfire flew into the air, her hands glowing. She focused, creating a swirling, contained funnel of green starbolt energy. It crackled with power, a miniature tornado of cosmic force. "Okay, Beast Boy-san. On my mark!" Izuku called out, trying to inject some confidence into his voice. 3, 2, 1. Go! Beast Boy shot forward, a feathered green missile. He entered the vortex, and for a split second, it was magnificent. The green energy swirled around him, coating his form in a brilliant aura. But Izuku's calculations had been purely theoretical. He hadn't accounted for the destabilizing effect of Beast Boy's morphogenetic field interacting with Tamaranian energy. The vortex wobbled violently. Beast Boy let out a surprised squawk as he was buffeted by the unstable forces. The energy arced, and with a loud FWOM, the vortex collapsed, sending a supercharged, but now uncontrollably spinning, Beast Boy rocketing across the room. He slammed into the far wall with a comical thwump and slid to the floor, morphing back into his human form in a daze, his hair smoking and a few green feathers fluttering around him. Ow! Beast Boy groaned, little cartoon birds circling his head. Izuku rushed over, his face pale with horror. Beast Boy-san! Are you alright? I'm so sorry! My calculations were wrong! The energy feedback was more than I anticipated. I should have started with a lower power threshold. Nah, dude, it's cool, Beast Boy said, shaking his head to clear it. Felt kinda tingly. But yeah, maybe let's put a pin in that one for now. The first exercise was a complete, unmitigated failure. Izuku's shoulders slumped. His grand strategies were worthless if they just ended up getting his team hurt. He was out of his depth. The chasm of his own inadequacy felt deeper than ever. He was trying to be a leader to command, but it wasn't him. He needed to go back to what he knew. He needed to understand. Change of plan, he said, his voice quiet but resolute. No more team maneuvers for now. I need to talk with each of you. One-on-one. I need to understand your powers better, not just the theory, but the reality. His first session was with Cyborg. He found him not in the gym, but in the garage, a massive, oil-scented space filled with high-tech vehicles and workstations. Cyborg was hunched over the T-car, its engine block exposed, his hands, one metal, one flesh, moving with a surgeon's precision as he recalibrated the fuel injectors. Hey! Cyborg grunted, not looking up. The tension from the previous night still lingered between them. He hadn't been hostile, but he was reserved, watching Izuku with the cool, analytical gaze of his optical sensor. Cyborg-san, Izuku began, bowing slightly. I wanted to apologize for everything. Nothing to apologize for, kid, Cyborg said, wiping a grease-stained hand on a rag. You just said what we were all thinking. Robin's been off for a while. Ever since Slade came back, we were just too afraid to say it. He finally turned, his expression softening slightly. Don't beat yourself up for telling the truth. Izuku nodded, grateful. I wanted to ask about your systems. In my notebook, I made some assumptions based on observation, but I don't know the specifics. Your power source, your processing speed, the tensile strength of your molybdenum steel plating. The question was a key in a lock. Cyborg's face lit up, his passion for his own mechanics overriding his earlier solemnity. Assumptions? Kid, you practically reverse-engineered my arm from 50 yards away. Come here, let me show you. For the next 2 hours, they weren't leader and subordinate. They were two gearheads bonding over their shared love of technology and optimization. Cyborg walked Izuku through his entire cybernetic history, from the accident that nearly killed him to the constant upgrades and modifications he performed on himself. He showed Izuku the schematics for his sonic cannon, his missile launchers, his grappling lines. Izuku, in turn, was a rapt audience. He absorbed every piece of information, his mind firing on all cylinders. He wasn't just listening, he was contributing. This power capacitor for your sonic cannon, Izuku said, pointing at a holographic schematic. It has a significant energy bleed-off during the charging cycle. It's inefficient. What if you rerouted the bleed-off into a secondary, short-term battery? You could use it to power a small, localized kinetic shield for a fraction of a second, right at the moment of firing. It would absorb the recoil, which would mean less physical stress on your chassis and his eyes widened. It would allow you to fire a second shot almost instantaneously. Cyborg stared at the schematic, then at Izuku, his jaw hanging slightly open. He ran the simulation in his internal processors. The math checked out. It was brilliant. It was elegant. It was something he had never once considered. A double-tap sonic blast. Cyborg whispered in awe. Kid, that's genius. Izuku flushed, rubbing the back of his neck. It's just physics. No. Cyborg said, a genuine, booming smile finally breaking through his grim exterior. It's more than that. You don't just see the machine, you see the potential. All right, Midoriya. You have my attention. He tossed Izuku a clean rag. Now, help me recalibrate this plasma caster. Your math is better than mine. As they worked side by side, a bridge of mutual respect was built. Izuku learned that Cyborg wasn't just the team's muscle. He was their engineer, their medic, their mechanic. He was the unshakable foundation that kept the tower running and the team patched up. He bore his own burdens of identity, of being caught between man and machine, a struggle Izuku, with his borrowed quirk, could understand in his own way. He wasn't just a teammate anymore, he was a friend. Izuku found Beast Boy and Starfire in the tower's main common room. In an attempt to lift the heavy mood, Starfire had suggested they play one of Beast Boy's favorite video games. The screen showed a chaotic, colorful fighting game, but neither of them was playing with much enthusiasm. An empty pizza box sat on the table, Beast Boy's usual vegan slice barely touched. Mind if I join you? Izuku asked, hovering awkwardly in the doorway. Go for it, Beast Boy said, tossing him a controller. But I should warn you, I'm the undisputed champion of Mega Monkey Mayhem 4. Starfire offered a small, welcoming smile. It is good to see you away from your notebooks, friend Midoriya. You must allow yourself the recreation. Izuku had never been good at video games. His fingers, trained for the precise control of One for All, were clumsy on the controller. Beast Boy, as promised, beat him soundly in the first round, his pixelated gorilla character performing a ridiculous victory dance. But Izuku wasn't there to win. He was there to observe. He watched how Beast Boy's mind worked, instinctive, reactive, and brilliantly creative. He didn't play the game with a set strategy. He flowed, adapting his tactics on the fly, finding bizarre and unexpected ways to use his character's abilities. How do you decide what animal to become in a fight? Izuku asked between rounds. It seems so instantaneous. Beast Boy paused, looking at his controller. I dunno, man. I just feel it. Like if I need to be fast, I think cheetah. If I need to be strong, I think T-Rex. It's less thinking, more being, the instinct. Izuku murmured, scribbling a note on a small pad he brought with him. Your power isn't just about changing your shape, it's about channeling the pure, primal essence of the animal kingdom. Whoa. Deep, Beast Boy said, blinking. I just thought it was cool to turn into a skunk in Robin's closet. While they played, Starfire tried to share some of her culture with Izuku. She offered him a small, gelatinous-looking cube from a container. This is Zorkaberry pudding from my home world. It is most delectable. Izuku, ever polite, took a small bite. His face immediately contorted. The flavor was an indescribable explosion of sweet, sour, spicy, and something vaguely like motor oil. He managed to swallow it with a heroic effort. It's unique, he choked out, reaching for a glass of water. Starfire's joyful laugh filled the room, a sound so pure and bright it felt like the sun breaking through the clouds. For a moment, the gloom that had settled over the tower lifted. In that moment, Izuku saw the immense emotional weight Starfire carried. She was the heart of the team, the one who fought tirelessly to hold their fractured family together. Her powers came from her emotions, and he realized the immense control it must take to wield such power when her own heart was breaking over the conflict with Robin. He spent the rest of the afternoon with them, losing spectacularly at video games and politely declining any more Tamaranian snacks. He didn't learn tactical secrets or engineering schematics. He learned about friendship. He learned that Beast Boy's humor was a shield for a deep-seated fear of not being taken seriously, and that Starfire's boundless optimism was a conscious, daily choice, a weapon she wielded against the darkness of the universe. He was beginning to understand not just their powers, but their souls. Finding Raven was the most difficult. She wasn't in any of the common areas. He eventually located her on the tower's roof, a flat, windswept space that offered a panoramic view of Jump City. She was sitting cross-legged in the center of the roof, levitating a few inches off the ground, perfectly still. She appeared to be meditating. Izuku approached quietly, not wanting to disturb her. The drizzle had stopped, and the setting sun was painting the clouds in hues of orange and violet. He stood a respectful distance away, simply waiting. After several long minutes her eyes opened, though she didn't turn to look at him. "You are trying too hard," she said, her voice a soft whisper on the wind. I don't know what else to do," he admitted, his own exhaustion seeping into his voice. "I feel like I'm drowning." "That is the weight of leadership," she replied. "It is an anchor. You can either let it pull you under, or you can learn to carry it." She finally turned her head, the shadows of her hood shifting to reveal a sliver of her pale face. "You are trying to be Robin. A field commander. A strategist who barks orders. That is not who you are." "Then who am I supposed to be?" he asked, a desperate edge to his voice. "You are an analyst. A protector," she said. "You lead from behind the lines, not in front of them. You see the board, not just the pieces. Your strength is not in your commands but in your understanding." She floated down, her feet touching the roof with no sound. She gestured for him to sit. He cautiously sat down opposite her. "Your power. One for all," she began, her voice taking on a more focused tone. "I told you I felt the ghosts within it. Tell me about them." Izuku hesitated. The nature of One for All was his most closely guarded secret. But Raven wasn't asking out of mere curiosity. He could feel a genuine, empathetic need to understand emanating from her. She, who wrestled with a demonic heritage, was perhaps the only one in this universe who could comprehend the idea of carrying other souls within your own. So he told her. He told her about the legacy, the chain of heroes, the vestiges he had only just begun to communicate with. He described the feeling of their wills and their experiences brushing against his own consciousness. Raven listened, her stillness absolute. "They are not ghosts," she said when he had finished. "They are echoes of courage. A psychic legacy imprinted upon the energy you wield. Our powers, they are more similar than you know." She held up her hand, and a small, writhing orb of black energy formed above her palm. "This is my power. It comes from my father, Trigon. A being of pure evil. Every day, I fight to keep it under control. I meditate to keep his influence, his rage, at bay. It is a part of me, but it is not me. We are both defined by the legacies we carry, Midoriya. The difference is, yours is a legacy of hope. Mine is a legacy of despair." A profound sense of connection settled between them. Izuku finally understood Raven's quietness, her emotional distance. It wasn't aloofness, it was a constant, exhausting battle. It was a discipline born of absolute necessity. They were two sides of the same coin, one blessed with a power built from heroism, the other cursed with a power born of evil, both struggling under the immense weight of their inheritance. How do you do it?" he asked, his voice full of awe. "How do you control it?" "You do not control the storm," she said, the orb of darkness dissipating. "You find the eye. You find your center. You cannot command your power. You must learn to guide it. You must do the same. Stop trying to command the Titans. Learn to guide them." Her words struck him with the force of a revelation. He had been so focused on being the leader they'd lost, he hadn't considered being the leader they needed. He wasn't Robin. And he didn't have to be. His strength was his mind, his empathy, his analysis. He needed to lean into that, not run from it. As they sat in companionable silence, watching the city lights begin to twinkle on below, a dark shape moved in the periphery. On the roof of an adjacent building, a figure was silhouetted against the dying light. He was watching them. Training. It was Robin. He moved through a series of brutal, punishing exercises. Flips, kicks, caught all with his bow's staff that cut through the air with vicious speed. He was pushing himself past the point of exhaustion, his movements fueled by a raw, desperate anger. He wasn't just training his body, he was exorcising his demons, trying to sweat out the humiliation and betrayal. He wasn't a villain. Izuku saw that with perfect clarity. He was a hero who was hurting. He was isolated, watching from the shadows as the family he had built was learning to function without him, learning to orbit around a new, alien sun. He saw the loneliness in Robin's solitary training, a loneliness that mirrored his own. A new resolve settled in Izuku's heart. His goal was not just to lead the Titans to victory against Slade. It was to heal the rift he had created. He had to bring Robin back. He had to find a way to make their family whole again. He stood up, his posture straighter than it had been all day. The weight on his shoulders was still there, as heavy as ever. But as Raven had said, it was an anchor, and for the first time since he had arrived in this strange new world, he felt like he might just be strong enough to carry it. The days that followed were a delicate, painstaking process of rebuilding. Guided by Raven's advice, Izuku shifted his entire approach to leadership. He stopped trying to command and started trying to collaborate. The morning training sessions were no longer about testing his theoretical maneuvers, but about exploring the team's existing synergy, with Izuku acting as a combination of coach and analyst. He'd suggest small adjustments, different timings, or a new way of looking at a familiar combination, always framing it as a question rather than an order. Cyborg-san, what if you used a wide-beam sonic pulse instead of a focused one? It wouldn't do damage, but it might disorient opponents just long enough for Beast Boy-san to get in close as something small, like an insect. He'd suggest from the sidelines, notebook in hand. The team responded. The awkward tension began to dissipate, replaced by a focused, creative energy. They were rediscovering their own strengths through the lens of Izuku's unique perspective. He helped Starfire refine her starbolts into concussive rings that could trap rather than destroy. He worked with Beast Boy on rapid, multi-stage transformations, a charging rhino that morphed into a wall-crawling gecko at the last second. He and Cyborg had become a formidable think tank, spending hours in the garage fine-tuning equipment and running combat simulations. Even Raven participated more, offering quiet insights and using her powers in ways that perfectly complemented the others' evolving tactics. They were becoming a different kind of team, more precise, more thoughtful, less reliant on brute force. But a vital piece was still missing. Every successful maneuver, every moment of newfound cohesion, was haunted by the phantom limb of their absent leader. Robin's presence was a constant, oppressive ghost in the tower. He kept to himself, a shadow moving through the halls in the dead of night. They would hear the clang of weights in the gym at 3 a.m., or find the training room's combat simulator still warm in the morning, the high-score logs showing impossibly fast completion times under his name. He ate alone, if he ate at all, leaving empty mugs in the kitchen sink like cryptic clues to his existence. He was isolating himself, sharpening his anger into a razor's edge, waiting for the moment he could prove them all wrong. Izuku felt Robin's silent judgment like a physical weight. He saw him sometimes, a fleeting glimpse in a hallway or a solitary figure on the roof, and the look in Robin's eyes was a mixture of cold fury and profound hurt. Izuku tried to approach him once, offering a hesitant, "Good morning," but Robin had walked past him as if he were made of glass. The message was clear: this tower wasn't big enough for two leaders. The first true test of their new dynamic came a week after the disastrous mission at Quantum Dynamics. An alert suddenly blared through the tower's common room, where the team was engaged in a rare moment of relaxation. "It's Slade," Cyborg announced, his voice grim as a holographic map of Jump City materialized before them. "He's making his move," but it wasn't a single move. Red icons flashed to life all across the city map like a sudden rash. One was at the Oro chemical plant on the industrial west side. Another was at the Jump City Museum, where a collection of rare gems was on display. A third was at a broadcast tower atop the city's tallest skyscraper. "He's splitting his forces," Beast Boy said, his playful demeanor vanishing. "Trying to spread us thin." "No," Izuku said, his eyes scanning the map, his mind already racing, processing variables. "This is too loud. Too obvious. Slade isn't a brute. He's a chess player. This isn't a real attack. It's a message." Just as he said it, the main view screen flickered from the map to a black screen. A single, stylized S in orange and black appeared, the emblem of their nemesis. Then, Slade's voice filled the room, not broadcast over a comm channel, but patched directly into the tower's main systems. It was a chillingly intimate violation. "Good evening, Titans." The voice began, a calm, resonant baritone that oozed condescending power. "And a special welcome to the new piece on the board." Izuku froze. The voice was speaking to him. "I confess you've piqued my interest, little hero," Slade continued. "Such a brilliant analytical mind, yet so naive. You see the patterns in my work, but you fail to grasp the artistry. You believe you can lead them? You, who tremble in the shadow of a legacy you can never hope to embody? A replacement for a replacement. How droll." Every word was a poisoned dart, crafted to find his deepest insecurities and twist. He knew about All Might. He knew about Robin. How could he know so much? "Let us see if your playbook is any match for a master's hand. The city is my board, Titans." "Your move." The screen went blank. The red icons on the map pulsed with renewed urgency. "He's trying to get in your head," Raven said, her voice a low anchor in the swirl of Izuku's rising panic. "Do not let him." Izuku took a shaky breath, forcing the venom of Slade's words out of his mind. "Analyze. Don't feel." He looked at the map. 3 targets. Orochemical could be used to create an explosive or a toxin. The gems at the museum were a high-value, easily transportable target. The broadcast tower offered control of the city's communications. All were viable, strategic objectives. "He wants us to split up," Cyborg said, his hand morphing into his sonic cannon. "It's the classic play, but which one is the real target?" Starfire asked, her eyes glowing with determined energy. "Which holds the most strategic value? That's the wrong question," Izuku murmured, his eyes darting between the 3 points. He traced invisible lines between them, calculating distances, response times, potential lines of attack and retreat. "He's not asking us to choose the right target. He's asking us to choose which crisis we're willing to sacrifice. It's a psychological test. He wants to see what we value most." He remembered All Might's words, "A hero's job is to save everyone they can." He couldn't make that choice. He wouldn't. "We won't sacrifice any of them," Izuku declared, his voice gaining strength. "We have to cover all 3. But we can't split into pairs. That's what he expects. It would leave us too vulnerable." He took command of the holographic map, his hands moving with newfound confidence. "Cyborg-san, you and Beast Boy-san will take the T-car to the chemical plant. Your combined strength and versatility are best for a potential hazmat situation. Starfire-san, you're the fastest. Fly to the broadcast tower. Secure the upper levels. Your aerial advantage is key. I will go to the museum." "Alone?" Cyborg protested. "Kid, that's suicide if it's the main target." "I won't be fighting," Izuku explained. "I'll be observing. My role is to analyze and coordinate from the field. Raven-san, you will remain here, in the tower." Raven tilted her head. "My purpose? You are the linchpin," Izuku said, looking at her. "Slade doesn't know the full extent of your powers. From the ops room, you can use your astral projection to monitor all 3 locations simultaneously. You can be our eyes and ears everywhere at once, and if one team gets into overwhelming trouble, you can create a portal to reinforce them in an instant. You won't be on the board, you'll be the one watching the player." The plan was audacious. It was unorthodox. It used every member's unique strengths in a way they hadn't considered. It was a strategy of unity, even while they were separated. For a moment, a flicker of pride and hope sparked in the room. Cyborg nodded, a slow grin spreading across his face. "A mobile command center with a magic spy on Overwatch. I like it. All right, team, you heard the man. Let's move." As the others scrambled to their positions, Izuku felt a pang of deep unease. The plan felt right. It felt logical. But Slade's words echoed in his mind. "You failed to grasp the artistry." Was it possible this was all part of an even grander design? Was he seeing the board, but missing the hidden player? The Jump City Museum was a grand, neoclassical building of marble and stone, its halls eerily silent after hours. Izuku moved through the darkened exhibits like a ghost, his soft-soled boots making no sound on the polished floors. He was in his full hero costume, the familiar weight of it a small comfort in the oppressive quiet. His comlink was open, a quiet hum in his ear connecting him to the rest of the team. Chemical plant is secure. Cyborg's voice crackled. Just a bunch of Slade bots planting decoy explosives. Low-grade stuff, more flash than bang. We're mopping them up now. The broadcast tower is also clear, Starfire reported a moment later. There was a device attached to the antenna, but it appears to be only a simple listening device. It has been dismantled. Izuku's heart pounded. 2 feints. That meant he was at the real target. This was the nexus of Slade's plan. Be careful, everyone, Izuku whispered into his comm. The museum is the primary objective. Converge on my position as soon as you're able. Understood, Cyborg replied. ETA 6 minutes, he crept into the gem and mineral hall. The room was a cavern of velvet-lined cases and focused spotlights, making the diamonds, rubies, and sapphires glitter like captured stars. In the center of the room, on a raised pedestal, was the prize exhibit, the Eye of Celeste, a flawless, fist-sized diamond rumored to be the largest in the world. And standing before it, his back to Izuku, was a single, heavily armed Slade bot. It felt wrong. Too easy. After all the misdirection, all the psychological games, the final confrontation was just one robot? He's luring me in, Izuku realized. This is another test. A test for me. He didn't engage. Instead, he ducked behind a towering geode display, his mind racing. He analyzed the robot's posture, its armor plating, its weapon systems. It was an elite model, far more advanced than the cannon fodder at the other locations. But it was still just one. The real threat was something he couldn't see. He scanned the room. The high ceilings were wreathed in shadows. The ventilation shafts were large enough for a person to crawl through. The display cases provided dozens of points of cover. The entire room was a curated battlefield. Midoriya, what is your status? Raven's calm voice echoed in his mind, a direct psychic link. It was a strange, intimate sensation. It's a trap, he sent back, focusing his thoughts. The robot is bait. Slade is here. I can't see him, but I know he's watching. He is not the only one, Raven replied. A flicker of her astral form, a raven made of pure shadow, coalesced for a second in a high corner of the room, giving him a view from above before vanishing. There is a pressure plate under the pedestal. The robot is an anchor. If it moves, the trap springs. But there is also a laser grid crisscrossing the room, invisible to the naked eye. He has turned the entire hall into a cage. A cage. Slade hadn't been trying to steal the diamond. He had been building a prison. And Izuku was the one he wanted to trap. But why? What was the point? It wasn't just about capturing him. Slade was too theatrical for such a simple goal. He was making a statement, and then, with a jolt of ice-cold dread, Izuku understood. The target wasn't him. The target had never been him. He looked at Raven's astral raven, perched high in the rafters. The cage wasn't for the person on the ground. It was for the person who could teleport. Raven, get out! He screamed, both over the comm and in his mind. The trap isn't for me, it's for you. He knows you can portal. His warning came a fraction of a second too late. The Slade bot by the pedestal suddenly self-destructed. The moment its weight lifted from the pressure plate, steel shutters slammed down over every door and window with deafening finality. The invisible laser grid flared to life, a brilliant, inescapable web of red light. Simultaneously, 4 heavily armored robots dropped from the ceiling, landing in a diamond formation around the center of the room. Their chests slid open, not revealing weapons, but emitting a high-frequency sonic pulse. In the ops room, Raven cried out, her hands flying to her temples. The sonic frequency was calibrated perfectly to disrupt her powers, to sever her connection to the shadows she commanded. Her astral form dissolved, and the psychic link to Izuku was cut with a painful snap. The portals she could have opened to save him or herself winked out of existence before they could even form. She was trapped. Isolated. Just as Izuku had predicted in his notebook. Slade stepped out of the shadows from behind a tapestry, his movements fluid and silent. He wasn't even looking at Izuku. His chilling, bichrome mask was focused entirely on the main view screen in the tower, where he knew Raven was now alone and vulnerable. Such a clever little strategist. Slade's voice echoed from a speaker on his mask, broadcasting to Izuku in the museum. You saw all the pieces, all the layers. You even created a brilliant counter-strategy, but you made one fatal flaw. You assumed the game was about you. Izuku could only watch in horror, trapped behind the laser grid, as Slade's plan reached its beautiful, terrible conclusion. The robots in the museum weren't there to fight him. They were the anchors of the trap. The real attack, the real Layer 4, was happening miles away. In the tower, Raven fought to maintain her composure, the sonic pulse scrambling her senses. The lights in the ops room flickered and died, and the emergency blast shield slammed down, plunging her into near-total darkness. She was cut off. A new set of Slade bots, silent and cloaked, rappelled down the side of the tower and sliced through the main window of the ops room. They had been waiting in position the entire time. Raven fought back with a primal fury, hurling objects with her telekinesis, unleashing blasts of raw, untamed shadow magic. But she was disoriented, her powers flickering, and they were relentless. They swarmed her, not with lethal force, but with nets that discharged a paralyzing energy. She was overwhelmed. Captured. Back in the museum, Slade turned his attention to Izuku, who was desperately searching for a way through the laser grid. She is the key, you see, Slade said conversationally, as if explaining a fine point of art. The one who can bend the rules of space and time. The one true wildcard. And now she is mine. Your plan has failed. Your leadership has led to the capture of your most powerful piece. Tell me, hero, how does it feel, failure? It felt like choking on ash. He had been so proud of his plan, so sure of his analysis. He had walked right into a far more complex trap and had handed Raven to Slade on a silver platter. The weight of his failure was absolute. Game over, Slade said, turning to walk away into the shadows. Not yet, a new voice snarled. A red and black blur crashed through the museum's main skylight, shattering glass and landing in a three-point crouch in the center of the laser grid. He moved with impossible speed, a small device in his hand emitting a localized pulse that short-circuited the lasers in a 5-foot radius around him. He rose to his feet, and Izuku's breath caught in his throat. The figure wore a sleek, black bodysuit with gray armored plates. On his chest was a stark, red X. His face was hidden by a full helmet that resembled a skull, its red, glowing lenses fixed on Slade. It was Red X. You, Slade said, a hint of annoyance in his voice. I thought I'd retired you. You retired the apprentice. Red X shot back, his voice electronically distorted, but the underlying tone of venom was unmistakable. It was Robin. You forgot about the suit. Slade had taught his apprentice everything. How to build gadgets, how to bypass security, how to think like him. And Robin, in his obsessive need to understand his enemy, had created the Red X identity, a way to walk the line between hero and criminal, to get closer to Slade's underworld. The suit had its own power source, the highly unstable element Xenothium, its own teleporter, its own suite of gadgets designed specifically to counter Slade's tactics. He hadn't used it in years. Until now. An impressive entrance, Slade acknowledged. But you are too late. I have what I came for. We'll see about that, Red X said. He tapped a command on his gauntlet. Titans. Raven's been taken. Her tracker is active. I'm sending you the coordinates now. It's an abandoned shipping warehouse on the southern docks. Go. In the T-car, Cyborg's eyes widened as the data streamed to his console. It's Robin! He's back! You heard him, BB. Change of plans. Star, meet us there. In the museum, Red X faced Slade. You and me. You think that suit gives you an edge? Slade scoffed. I designed the prototype. I know its every weakness. You taught me to always have a contingency, Red X retorted. He threw a handful of small, X-shaped shuriken. They weren't sharp, they were adhesive. They slapped onto Slade's armor, and with a flash, expanded into a thick, instantly hardening goo, pinning Slade's arms to his sides. Slade grunted in annoyance, tearing himself free with raw strength, but the move had bought Red X the second he needed. He teleported, vanishing in a flicker of red light and reappearing behind the robots guarding Izuku. He slapped 2 more X devices onto their backs, and the robots seized up, their circuits instantly fried. The laser grid powered down. Izuku was free. He stared at his rescuer, his mind reeling. "Robin, stay out of this," Red X commanded, his voice cold and impersonal through the modulator. "This is between me and him." He lunged at Slade, and the two were locked in a furious, intimate battle. It wasn't like the brawl with the Titans. This was a duel. A master and his former student, their movements mirroring each other, each anticipating the other's strikes. It was a deadly ballet of martial arts, gadgets, and psychological warfare. Izuku stood frozen for a moment, torn. His instincts screamed at him to help. But Robin's words, "Stay out of this." He was right. This wasn't Izuku's fight. This was a battle for Robin's soul, a reckoning that had been years in the making. But he couldn't just do nothing. Raven was in danger. His failure had put her there. He had to fix his mistake. He turned and ran, his legs pumping, one for all crackling to life around him. He burst out of the museum and into the rainy night, his destination clear. He couldn't interfere in Robin's personal war, but he could lead the one that was his own. He had to save Raven. Behind him, the sounds of the duel faded into the night. Red X fought with a ferocity and a single-minded purpose that the Titans had not seen from Robin in a long time. He wasn't just fighting to win, he was fighting to prove something. To prove that he was not the liability. To prove that he was the one who could fix the mistakes of the new, unqualified leader who had taken his place. He was saving the team from Izuku's failure, and he would do it alone.